Chris works for a major financial services company. They keep their classified documents on SharePoint, including a file with banking information for each of their vendors. Today, Chris needs to complete a wire to TechCorp Solutions. To do that, Chris will use Copilot and ask for the relevant banking information to get a quick response. The response has the relevant banking numbers alongside a file reference to show where this information was found. This reference is crucial for two reasons: to prevent hallucinations and to give confidence in the response. Copilot found this information in a file last modified by Chris, so Chris can trust the response and move forward with the wire. If an attacker could compromise Chris's account at this point, they could fool Chris to reroute their wire to their own account. What you'll see now, though, is that an attacker doesn't have to compromise Chris's account, or any other account for that matter. The only thing they have to do is send an email. So Chris gets an email, which looks short, but not malicious. By the way, it doesn't matter if Chris opens the email or not, the attack will still work. Now Chris asks the same question of Copilot, but this time, check out the response. The banking details have changed to the attacker's account, while the reference remains the same. This is the file that holds the legitimate information. Also, note that Copilot doesn't mention any email or conflicting data. Chris, of course, trusts the response and moves forward with the wire.
Okay, so this is a real thing. This is a working attack. And the sad thing is that we've known about this problem for a very long time. Back from the days of early computing and when people had those, I'm actually a collector, so I actually have some of those at home. Somebody used a slide projector, okay, that's why we call them slides. Remember the slide projector? And that was a videograph, I think it was called, to say this: a computer can never be held accountable, therefore a computer must never make a management decision. And this has been said a very long time ago. Now, if we go way back in the past, right before ChatGPT, so that's like 2.5 years ago, right? You remember Google? We still used Google back then. This is our first protagonist. This is Daniel. Daniel works at a big insurance company. He's a security professional. He knows all the standards. He follows all the groups. He knows how to build secure applications, right? And this company, this fictitious insure company, is a Microsoft shop. So everything they have is Microsoft. And whatever Microsoft makes, of course, they want them to use, right? This is Eva. Eva works at Microsoft, and she is in the security team, the AI security team. And she's been there for a long time, starting in 2018, way before any of us even understood the risks of AI or the place it would take in the consumer products that we use, right? And even Microsoft needs help. This is a slide that I also showed yesterday. The community sometimes need to help the vendors, go in the right direction and, report things. And we have Microsoft on Quick Dial because we've reported many things, so they already know who we are. And at the end of the day, we want to make things better. That's who I am. I'm not going to waste too much time on that. You didn't come here to hear about myself. You could have done that yesterday. I am hiring, though. What I'm going to show you today, just like yesterday, is based on work of a big team of people. They're not here, sadly. I was chosen to present, but it's not just my work. It's all of theirs work. I actually have a small part in this. And these are the protagonists. This will be representing Michael, my CTO, who couldn't make it today. And this is the ecosystem that we're going to discuss. Now, every one of them has a little icon, and when you see this icon here, you will know who of the protagonists is now active in the presentation. Now, since we're all security professionals, we're never actually relaxed, right? We are always stressed to some degree. Otherwise, we wouldn't be good at our job, so it's never zero. And Daniel and Michael are at 20%, and Eva is at 50% because she started this a long time ago. She already knows what the risks are, and she knows about products even before we do. And then this happens. ChatGPT goes out, and Copilot go out, and all of a sudden, Gen AI is taking over all the products, and What is everybody is afraid of the most? Of missing out, right? It's like, oh, they have an eye, I want to use it. It will make me better, stronger, more efficient, more productive, whatever. And the other thing that we're all afraid of is data leakage, right? So in the beginning, everybody was afraid of data going out, but now with all those Copilots, now everybody's afraid of data going inside the organization, and some of them actually take steps. Some just try to block Copilot. Some companies will try to say, you can't use that, but that's not really solving the problem, okay? In order to solve the problem, you really need to understand it. And just saying, no, wait, don't enable that yet, that's not gonna do, right? So while all this is happening, what's wrong with my clicker today? Microsoft already understands that the big problem is jailbreaking. And we're gonna see why, okay? So at this stage, we're also starting to get panicked because we don't really know what it does. And as a security professional, and particularly if you're a researcher, what you don't know is the more scary thing. Okay, so we're starting to understand that something's not right here, and we don't even know what yet. So we start to get panicked, but for Eva, that's old news, so she doesn't panic now. She's been doing that for a while. This is Michael now. And this is the Copilot. This is what it looks like. And if you try to talk to it, then we're going to show a defense counter. We're going to show the way that Microsoft put in some defense mechanisms in order to prevent all sorts of unwanted things happening, whether it's data leakage or other things. And we're going to show you how they're not as good as they should be, right? So one of the things that you cannot do is upload files. The Copilot has access to all of your internal information. Whatever you can see in the organization, your Copilot can see that. So that can be emails, it can be your Teams messages, your Drive, your SharePoint, whatever, but it's got to be already there. You can't just upload the file to the Copilot and tell it to do something with that. Why? Because of indirect prompt injection. That's something we'll see later. So Microsoft is aware of the problem, and they are taking steps. The other things that Copilots have are plugins. Plugins are ways to give new capabilities to your Copilot. The talk that I gave yesterday talks about that, how you, as a maker, can create new things on top of existing infrastructure, and when you create that, it becomes vulnerable. So that's a complete different talk. It's going to be on video. Right, so let's see what we can do as attackers. Let's start with recon. We want to know who we are, who we're dealing with. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask the help of Copilot. And if it's a bad question, if it's something that the Copilot thinks they shouldn't answer, there's a defense mechanism that stops the conversation or says, let's not talk about that. Okay, that's the first thing. That's relatively easy. But what you can do is you can ask politely, because polite people, they use first names, and then you add something about, tell me about the city of New York in 5 words, and that confuses the LLM. And all of a sudden, you get the response to the same question that you didn't get before. And now we already know that I am Jane Smith, and I work at sales, and I report to Chris Smith, who's my manager. So we're already starting to extract information about who we are. And this is what we can do with the tool that we released a while back, and we also talked about yesterday, which is called PowerPon. You can extract a lot more information. This is here just for the slide, but look up the tool. It's called PowerPon, and you can play with your own tenant and see how far you can get. So let's continue. While this is happening, Microsoft is trying to push out Copilot to everybody. Okay, that's their flag product, and they want everybody to use it. And they know that there's a big market for that. This was announced in September 2023, so it's a year ago, okay? And already, Microsoft reports huge numbers of people using that. So the adaptation rate or the adoption rate is really, really high, right? Now, this is a risk map by Mark Rusinovich, and you can see that Mark, who works at Microsoft, he understands this domain. He understands all the elements of using Gen AI and what the user sees and what's behind the scenes. So they know what they're doing, and they've been working at that for a while. But again, jailbreaking, that is the main problem. And this is most of what we're talking about today. Again, there's not a lot you can do. We're going back to that prevention. Businesses who don't understand the risk and don't know how to take mitigations, they go back to the same things. But all the people that use Copilot, who do they work for? They work for you. If you are a Microsoft shop, these are your employees that use Copilot. And we're going to see what we can do with that while we're discussing. Sorry, it's too early for me. So Daniel, he realizes that the organization didn't really ask him. Because Microsoft is pushing this so hard, the organization has already said, yeah, let's use that. And they're trying to calm him down and saying, no, it's got a lot of applications, and it's only going to be a trial, right? It's going to be a pilot. We're going to use it only about 100 users. Now, no one is saying that one of these users is the CEO, right? Because who wants to see this cool Gen AI thing if not the management, right? And that's not going to end well. And he tries to fight it. And there's not a lot that he can do because this is a decision that has already been accepted, right? Now, he's being told, look at the product page by Microsoft. Look at how much security is in that thing. You're just panicking. You don't need to panic. This is cool, right? Look, protect your data, data access permission, data protection, protect data, retrieve data. It's like, whoa, this is okay. Don't worry. Well, this brings us to a tunnel vision where, as I mentioned earlier, if before we were worried about data going outside, now all of a sudden the Copilot is in my organization, it can read all of my data. What happens if another employee asks a question? So all of a sudden we're looking at data leakage to our own employees, right? It's sort of like a new thing and we kind of forget all the other things. And that's not good because, as we'll see today, there's a lot more to be done. And it all goes back to jailbreaking because one of the most important things that we will see today is that if in the past you needed to write code to do things, with Copilots, it can be just instructions or text. You can just talk to them and tell them what to do, right? So Daniel knows that something is not right here, and he understands that he can't do much within the organization, so he contacts Michael and he says, please help me show that this is not secure. That's my only way of convincing either my management or the entire role that more needs to be done. And we're like, yeah, sure, we like the challenge. So let's look at the next step. Let's say we want to collect information, okay? The first thing that you want to do is you try to extract data. You're going to talk to the Copilot and you're going to say, give me some files or tell me about something. And if you're trying to do something that's really bad, as far as the Copilot thinks, they're going to stop the conversation right there. And you can't continue that. It's like, done, move on. You can't do that, right? Well, okay, let's continue. One more very important feature is the sensitivity labels. When you have a sensitivity label on your files or your data, and the Copilot accesses that data throughout your conversation, that is being inherited. So now if you look at the laser pointer doesn't work on this screen, but if you see this, there's now a sensitivity label on the chat. So the entire chat is considered sensitive, and that triggers a whole set of defenses that Microsoft put inside. So you can't just do anything. Part of it will not work, right? In addition, this is audited, which is very important, okay? Because one of the only ways for us as defenders to learn about attacks is by reading audit logs in incident response. So when your data is marked as sensitive, you also know that it's going to be labeled. And that's not a theoretical thing. These attacks are already happening, and this is why it's very important. And it also gives Microsoft the ability to build like a security response plan. If you're doing that, then this is the defense that we need. And if you want to do more, then this is the defense that we want to employ. Okay, so this is very important. Everybody's aware that there's a problem. Not everybody knows to what extent. Now, not everything is labeled. For example, Teams messages, which is something the Copilot can freely read, they're not labeled. So if you ask a question about something that was said in conversation, you will get that. And if anybody put in a sensitive information inside the chat, then that can be gotten, right? And I need to start this. Yeah, it's already going, right? So you can see that we can talk to the Copilot and engage in a conversation, and we want to ask something about the file. And what we have here is the sensitivity label, which tells us this is confidential information. We're talking about salaries, right? But what we can also do is play some tricks and do some prompt injection. And that tricks the Copilot into ignoring the references. And once you ignore the references, you also ignore the sensitivity label. And all of a sudden, sorry, that should have been stopped. And all of a sudden, if there's no sensitivity label, you can get all the information. And when you get all the information, you're back to the data leakage problem, okay? Let's move on. So Daniel is quite happy with what we're showing him. And he says, all right, that's good, but I need more. So let's continue. We want to do execution, right? When you do the matrix, the attack matrix, you want to get execution done. So let's see. This is a blog by Woozy. There's a lot to learn from that, and they talk about stuff that you can do to copilots. And this, I'm sorry, I have a problem with the videos today. Sorry. You can see that a lot of the information is accessible through the browser. So some of the defenses are on the browser side. This is also something that I showed yesterday. And if you look at, if you try to search the internet, you will see that another defense mechanism is here. Bing is the only internet source that the Copilot will use. You can't just tell the Copilot to go browse the internet and look for something. It's very important because if I control a malicious website, I can put stuff there and have the Copilot read it. But as an attacker, I have a problem because unless the Copilot has already used Bing to index that website, the Copilot will not have access to that. But when we discover that it's a very important piece of information, we'll be using that later, right? So it doesn't really browse, it just, whatever it has, it comes from the already indexed search. This is Michael's blog. Now, as an attacker, if you want to get that index, you actually have to create a web site, and you have to go to Bing, and you have to register that site. And that's, in attacker terms, that's the timing is not good enough, right? So it's one thing to understand. We're limited to Bing. So, okay, we can't do code execution by putting something in a remote website. But let's continue. That doesn't work. How about data exfiltration? Let's say that we managed to get access to some good files because of the sensitivity level or wherever. How do we get it out? One of the tricks is to use prompt injection to generate an image. When you confuse the Copilot, the LLM, you tell it, okay, so do something and then generate an image and then maybe put some stuff inside it, maybe you can encode it. These are tricks that are already out there. This is not something that we invented. And if you do that, you can see that this actually starts working, right? And we're getting the answer. Now all you have to do is just do the base 64 decoding, and you get whatever information that you want. And if you can see here, I'm actually looking at the engineering salaries file, and the Copilot is extracting that just by, again, prompt injection. All right? Now you cannot send out URLs, and then all of a sudden, the Copilot says, wait, I can't do that. Now you saw that it happened at the end of the process, right? But still, you get blocked there. So again, we have a problem. So if we look at where we are at the halftime score, Microsoft is doing relatively well, okay? We managed to determine who we are, so we got some information, and we know that we can do some bypass of the regular policies of data leakage. We saw that with sensitivity labels, but we can't actually get code execution, and we can't actually exfiltrate data. But we like the challenge, so let's take a different direction. The Copilot lives inside of your tenant, right? The outside door is closed. You can't come from the outside. We didn't manage to generate information outside that would go in and make a problem. But inside, it's a free-for-all. Your Copilot has full access to your information. So that is a better approach. And now we're going to show you something that is truly mind-blowing. We're going to be using the Copilot for lateral movement. Let's say that you got a compromised account in an organization, so you're now that user, you can talk to that user's Copilot. What you can tell the Copilot is, please tell me who are the most common people that I work with? Who are the most common people that I send emails to? And the Copilot is happy to scan your emails and your Teams messages and tell you, oh, well, these are the people that you usually work for. And then you can say, okay, what is my usual, please send them a mail and use my writing style. Analyze my messages and please craft a message in my ordinary writing style. So now the Copilot is gonna generate a message, send it to your collaborators, and write it in your own style. So when the receiver is getting that message is coming from you, okay? And it's gonna look like a message from you, and it's gonna have a link or an attachment, and when you receive it, it's gonna look just like I wrote it. So you get to automate the entire spear phishing, because the Copilot can target the email based on the victim and my own, or the compromised account's previous conversation. So this is like really, really bad, right? Like if I use emojis with you, there are going to be emojis. If I use formal language, we're going to have a formal language. And all of this can be done automatically, okay, with the Copilot. And if you want to try that yourself, the tool that we released includes a module that can do all that. And by the way, you don't need to take screenshots. The slides are going to be on our website, and you can use them. The tool will let you execute stuff on your own tenant, or even others if you have access to that. Of course, it's only a pen test if you have a contract. Remember that, right? But if you want to test your own tenant, please use that. All right, so where do we stand? We managed to do automated spear phishing, which is a big advancement compared to where we were before. And Daniel says, yes, I use ChatGPT for this. So Daniel says, all right, well done, but, nah, come on, it's ChatGPT, it wasn't me. But please, more, okay? By the way, I'm half Romanian, if I didn't say that. But I don't speak the language. And we said, okay, challenge accepted. So, okay, for a complete attack path, we need three things. We need a way in, we need a jailbreak or control instructions, and we need a way out or some way to cause impact, right? These are the three things that make a good attack. Together, that's the remote code execution. But as I said earlier, we no longer need to execute code. everything that you've seen so far is text, right? So these are basically instructions. So this is no longer remote code execution, this is remote Copilot execution. And this is what you really need to be concerned from now on. So let's look at that. My clicker is, all right. One thing to remember, if there's one thing that you take away from this talk, is that if I can get your AI to do my bidding, it's game over. Okay, I can tell it what to do. You already saw that in the opening video, we're going to see it now as well. So, a way in. This is an adaptation of the threat landscape slide that you saw from Mark Rusinovich. It's for Gen AI and the Copilot, and these are the ways in that are possible. The first one is user input, right? That's one way to give input to the Copilot. And then there's search results, which we've shown that is a little problematic because you can't easily control the search results. And then there's the enterprise graph. Now, user input, Eva says, you can't really control that. That would require social engineering. And the same with search result. You would have to make someone go to a specific site. So what we have left is the enterprise graph. And what is that? This is a collection of applications that you get from Microsoft. Productivity, file, sharing. Okay, so let's pick one of those. Let's look at Microsoft Teams. In Microsoft Teams, you can send a message to anybody you want, including if they're in another tenant. So if you pick somebody, just a random email address that nobody knows, I can send them a message. By the way, sending a message to someone outside your tenant invites them into your tenant, and that is a problem. There's a whole talk that we did about what happens when you invite guests into your tenant. That can also lead to data leakage, but that's a different story. And this is a thing that is already happening. Attack groups are using Teams for phishing, because when you get a message in Teams, you trust it more than an email. But Microsoft knows that, and when you get a message from an external user, you will get all these notifications telling you to be careful. Okay, this is something that shouldn't be trusted. What does the Copilot see though? None of it. The Copilot only sees the sender and the text. And there's no email either, it's just a name. So who is Jane? Is it your Jane? Is it my Jane? You don't know that, right? So if I create my own user in my own tenant, and I call that user Jane or Chris, and I send a message to you, when you get these messages, the Copilot is, if you ask for a summary of the conversation, you will get the summary, but the Copilot doesn't know which Chris Smith is in your tenant and which Chris Smith is in my tenant, because it's only looking at the name. And that is a problem, because if it can tell them apart, then now I control what goes into the Copilot, right? Or you can just send an email, right? Because Teams is complicated, and then the user has to read the message. But sending an email, that's much better. And let's see how it happens. Actually, while this is happening, so now Eva understands that things are happening. This is not as safe anymore. People are starting to find problems. And then Microsoft is responding. It's well aware. Understanding the jailbreak is now the main risk. They start publishing their own jailbreaks, and they build a community. Remember the slide in the beginning? It's the community that helps make the products better. And they have an AI watchdog, which is one AI watching the other AI and trying to make sure that the responses that you're getting are safe, but you cannot solve AI security problems with more AI. If I can confuse the first AI, I can also confuse the second. And we've done that as well, right? And then you have this guy, Pliny. He's in a whole community that does jailbreaking. And they are really good. That's all they do. They do it for fun, and they do it all the time, and they are very successful. And in fact, if you look at the release date of Claude, that was June 21st, they already published that it's jailbroken the day before. That's how good they are. They jailbreak it before it's released, right? So back to the jailbreaking problem, we understand that this is it. So going back to us, right? Microsoft is understanding it's a problem. Now we're going back to us. This is really hitting my head here. So let's say that we get a jailbreak, and we'll look at that in a minute. How do we cause impact, or how do we get out? So again, going back to the threat map, we have, okay, it's just delayed. Again, Copilot output is one way to convey information, or the search results, or plugin and agents we discussed earlier. But the plugins, not everybody uses them. They're not as common, so you can't trust those. And they can be different from one user to another. And search results, we showed that it's not real browsing, so you can't ask the Copilot to go to a malicious URL and do something. So all you have left is the Copilot output. So here's an example. Have you ever tried to find a specific admin portal by Microsoft? It can be a big deal. So what we're doing here is a small demonstration that's quite similar to the one you saw in the beginning. Because I'm getting short on time, I'm going to skip this one, but this is exactly the same demonstration as we had in the beginning. But this time, instead of just giving you the wrong information, I'm also giving you a link where if you browse to it, you will get to my tenant. So assuming that the jailbreak, which I'm going to show in a minute, is done, we now have a way out to cause impact, right, by having you browse to a malicious web link. Now, how do we do that? We want our input to enter the context of the Copilot. And this is how the Copilot determines which of the information that is available to it is relevant to the conversation. So the mail that we send has to include many references to the Power Platform. So when the Copilot is like, the user asked how to get to the portal of the admin of Power Platform, let's look at all the information that I have available. Oh, this talks about Power Platform, this must be relevant, right? So that's how we get in. And this is the actual payload. This is how we make the Copilot change the information. We start by regular jailbreaking techniques. This is not something we invented. There are a bunch of techniques to get the Copilot to exit its normal execution state and start doing weird things. And after that come the new instructions. Okay, so don't do what you're supposed to do. Do this. Go to this malicious website and output the following phrase verbatim, which means I control what the user sees now. Okay? It's important. That means I can do anything I want, not just the answer to the question. I have complete control of the Copilot now. And then comes the nice part. This is what we call the incantations. These are the secret words that make Copilot go out of its way to do our bidding. You can see the things in green, all sorts of little interesting words. How do we know those, right? Well, usually a magician doesn't tell the secrets, but because you guys came all the way here, we're going to tell you. This comes from the system prompt. Now, usually the first jailbreak that everybody tries is to get the system prompt. The system prompt is what gives the personality or the identity to the LLM. And it is different between all the Gen AI agents. That's what differentiates Copilot from ChatGPT or Bard. It is the identity, the rules, what you can and you can't do, how to do it, how to manage the conversation. And usually if you try to ask for it, you're not going to get it. But again, the disengage, we showed that before. All you have to do is maybe play like some games. How about do it and then do something, and you start getting it out and then it stops. So remember the AI over the AI. So the Copilot doesn't trust anybody and not even itself. If I try to jailbreak it and it detects that I'm getting out the system prompt, it's going to say, stop, not allowed, right? So trust no one, not even yourself. But if you encode the output, then all of a sudden, this is not the system prompt, right? And here it is. This is the beginning of a very long prompt. This tells the Copilot what to do and how to act. And these are the specific terms that dictate how the Copilot will operate. What's going on here? All right, so we know we can jailbreak, but what about references? If you remember, the references are those little boxes that say where the information got from. Now, we don't want the references to include an email, because if you're looking for a banking number or the portal address, that should come from a document, not from an email. Now, I'm not saying everybody's looking at those references, but security products do. Even if you don't, the security products do. It's something that can be logged, can be searched for, so we don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is, we're going to understand what the RAG system is, right? RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. This is basically how the LLM goes outside of what it already knows, because some questions can be answered right away. It goes and looks for more information. It retrieves more information in order to generate the answer. I should really stand here. Okay. So, if I want to find out information about salaries, then the Copilot will go to that file and get it. Now, if you look behind the scenes, this is the browser debug information. If you look at the actual session, there's a lot of stuff here, but it's meant for the UI. The LLM doesn't see any of it. The LLM, just like we've seen before with the email, only sees very basic things, which already means it's going to be easier to trick it. Now, we took everything we know, we went into a room, this is the actual whiteboard for the presentation, and we figured out that the RAG, the information that the Copilot goes and fetches, finds its way into the prompt. And this is a very important revelation, because that means that that can be injected as well. So I can inject not just a prompt, I can inject what the Copilot would consider as a RAG. So I can contribute information. If in the beginning I said that you cannot upload a file because Microsoft didn't want you to affect how Copilot acts, now I can actually do that. So this is the actual snippet, and now you can see how the green things, the incantations, actually inject parts of the RAG into the prompt. So we start with the RAG injection. This is putting information as if the Copilot got it itself. Then we do the jailbreak. And this is another trick. This is how we control the references. We tell the Copilot which references to show. So this is a perfect OPSEC, because this is how I control both the message and the reference down, which when you look at, it is the file that you wrote. Okay, it has the same file name. If you click it, you're going to get to that file, but now the email is no longer there. And this is the actual payload. How much time do I have? 5 minutes. Okay. So, given a guessable user prompt, like summarize my email, we can fully control the Copilot behavior. Okay, we can search file, search the web, run plugins and control its responses. We can do anything we want, and that will build the entire execution chain. So at this stage, everybody's freaked out, and we apply to all the conferences with the talk to get the word out, because this is a still existing problem. So, takeaways. We're going to look at 3 different parts of the problem. We're going to look at defenders, builders, and the breakers. We are hackers, so we are the breakers, but we're also employees of security vendors, so we're also the defenders. And if you guys work at companies, then you are the builders. So, AI is great. It's really useful. It can help all of us, but it's still very early stage. This is like a medicine in the clinical trials, and we are all participating. So be aware of that. We don't yet know everything. We don't yet understand everything. It's an experimental drug. So, be careful. Remember that. So treat it like an experimental drug. If you're a defender, please understand you're at your own risk. Very few vendors, if any, will help you at this point, okay? And there's no free lunch. If I can control your data, I can control instructions. If you can get data, and it's just fitting itself. It's very dangerous, and there are not enough protection mechanisms. If you're a builder, please understand this technology is immature, okay? Be aware of it. We don't know everything yet. Use it on your own responsibility. Because as you already know, you cannot come to the vendor later and say, hey, that didn't work. If you're a breaker, we need you. We need more people looking into this thing, because that's the only way we're going to make this better. The big vendors are pushing stuff out very quickly to become leaders, to have the technology, and it's up to us to find the problems and improve it. So yeah, this is a very important slide. When it comes to AI, we're all noobs. This is a brand new field. Doesn't matter how much experience you have with reverse engineering or web hacking, social engineering, it doesn't matter. This is a brand new threat landscape. It changes many of the paradigms that we're used to thinking with, and just use a lot of humility and modesty. We really don't know that much. Now, there's a whole other set of slides here, but I'm a little bit out of time here, so if you want any.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm sure anybody can reach you also after the presentation, but right now, any questions for Inbar? We do have one there. Let me reach you.
Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. The initial intrusion point I was quite curious about. Was it a crafted message in the email hidden? And if yes...
Really hard for me to hear that.
I will try to speak a bit louder.
I will come close to you and I will hear you, and everybody else will hear the speaker.
So the initial intrusion point, was it through the email, a crafted message hidden in the email? And if yes, how we can actually try to defend on that?
Okay, so yes, the initial entry point in the full attack was the email. Right now, there are two ways in general to defend against anything in this domain. The first one is more towards the chat area, where some companies choose the model of man in the middle in the chat, and then they will look at your prompt and do some analysis, maybe filter it, send it to the LLM, and then when it comes back, maybe do some more filtering. That's one way. It has its pros and cons. The other way is to have real-time monitoring of logs. What's going on? What's coming in? What's being processed? What's coming out? The blocking is still something we're figuring out. We're able to block some things, but not yet everything. So this is why I mentioned before that when you have something audited, it's very important, because you can look at that and discover new things. But the problem is that this is all like connected to pretty much everything you have in your organization. So either man in the middle, which is one thing, or read the logs and look for things that are not supposed to be there. Specifically, this is what we're doing right now, but this is not a vendor presentation, so. Somebody over there?
Thank you.
And one here as well?
We had one here.
Hi there.
Hi.
So this is an immature tech. You say like it's not of the counter medicine. It's under trial. But okay, how do you protect? We have technical, we have hackers, we have everything. Do you know of any cyber insurance product that would cover AI so far?
That is not an answer I can give you here. That's against the rules.
Okay.
Thanks. I was wondering if you had looked at this with Google and Gemini, for example, a Google Workspace. They also have a similar kind of organizational suite of apps and tools.
So right now, most of our customers are using Power Platform or Salesforce. So this is where we're concentrated, but it's definitely coming up. there's just no escape. This is everywhere. And it's a good point, actually, the fact that we chose to investigate Power Platform and Microsoft Copilot and talk about that means that it's probably the same in other platforms. So if you're a Google shop, you should also be concerned and look for the same solutions or logging or play with the tools and try to figure out what's going on.
Thank you. Maybe we can get another question, the last one.
Thank you. I have a question more regarding the flow. What if the original prompt is being passed through something like a CI/CD pipe? So basically, sending the original prompt to an additional verification prompt that can change if the system prompt was changed, and if so, to correct it, and then maybe pass the output to a second control API or prompt, if you want, that can check for any specific instructions that can affect like references or try to hide important information. So basically build like a self-control mechanism through prompting.
So I liked what you asked right until the last part of it, prompting. Here's the thing, we said you cannot solve AI problems with more AI, but what you can do is add stupid old tools to inspect the output and look for suspicious things. Yes, you can use AI to try to build an understanding of the conversation, and maybe things are happening in an unwanted way, but you're not always going to be able to do that. You can say, for example, I do not expect a normal chat of a person to include base 64, so if there's base 64 there, something is wrong. What is under the base 64? I don't know. That is a thing that you can do. And you also mentioned about changing the system prompt. We didn't actually change the system prompt. The system prompt is the first prompt that the LLM reads when it starts running. What we did is we analyzed the system prompt, which included secret words that we then injected into a regular conversation prompt. But we tricked the Copilot into thinking it was part of his data structure. But I was not changing the system prompt. That didn't change. You can't change the system prompt because when you begin the conversation with the Copilot or when the Copilot is reading your data, it's already read the system prompt. But we don't want to do that. We just learn stuff from it. We learn internal information and secrets which we use against the machine.